on the topic of online quality, and I think everybody's being prompted to agree to the recording right now. So my name is Karen Batke, and I'm a member of the college's instruction committee. For those of you who don't know much about the instruction committee, it is an elected group of faculty that pursue all things related to instruction and pedagogy here at the College of DuPage. We are charged with directing and maintaining the academic integrity of the curriculum and learning experience, and provide recommendations to college leadership. Our motivation for scheduling these panels was to allow for faculty in our area, the Nursing and Health Science Division, to have a conversation about what constitutes good, quality instructional delivery in an online setting. While many groups across campus have given consideration to this topic, we think this is the first campus-wide opportunity to discuss this in a large group setting. Thank you for being here. I'd like to welcome and thank each of our panelists for volunteering to talk with us today. As with all faculty panels that our committee facilitates, each of our guests will provide a 10-minute presentation followed by questions and answers. Without further ado, I'd like to hand things off to our panelists. Our three panelists today are Barbara Coe, Ramsey Wilson, and Melissa McGovern. Barb Coe was kind enough to agree to start things off for us, so I'm going to pass the baton to Barb Coe.
Thank you. Well, thanks you guys for having me on today. You know, I did prepare a little something, but I think what I'm going to do other than that, it was just some visual prompts. I'm not sure that how much they're really going to add. Let me just kind of discuss how I approach the online portion of the transition from face-to-face to online. And what I saw happen was a decrease in engagement. And so that directly affected quality, right? I have been teaching a flipped class for a number of years now. And I'll sort of quickly review what flipped is. So I create these Camtasia recordings and I load up my Blackboard for the entire semester of videos that the student must watch before they come into class. And each video can be start and stopped at any time, so the student isn't obligated to do a one-time sitting. They can be viewed multiple times. They have annotations to them. So if I feel like there's something I really want to stress, I'm circling it, or I'm doing something that draws, there's a visual prompt to bring their attention to it. They have bookmarks in them, so the student can go directly to a portion of the video if they want to review just like a 10-minute snippet of a specific content within the entire video. But students are mandated to watch these videos before they come into class. And that's always been true of a flipped class. It just felt like when I was in face-to-face that once I had them in class, I had their full attention. When I went online, it got to be a little bit more difficult. I couldn't feel who was with me, you know? And most of my students chose, a large portion of my students continue to choose camera off. And so I have to keep pulling engagement out of them throughout the class and on a sort of random basis. So I know who's really with me and who's not in front of their computer any longer. The way the flipped class runs that I teach is the first 10 minutes of every class is a quick 10-question quiz. And that is going to be just it's going to answer just recall questions, recall only. Recall questions on any of the content within the videos. And that's how I know if my students are prepared to engage in class. The rest of the time, I'm putting up content on the screen And this is where application and analysis comes in. For example, I'm teaching pulmonary function this semester. And so I would put the results of a pulmonary function test up. And then as a class, we would discuss, you know, what's normal, what's abnormal, what do you think, what are these findings consistent with, what disease states are these findings consistent with, how can you prove that to me? I can even go into other classes and try to bring objectives from other classes to try to create a big patient image of what kind of patient this would be. What do you think their CBC results are? What do you think their chest x-ray looks like? What do you think patient presentation when they came in the ED the day before was? What's the treatment plan for this? What's their med list? And so I can keep pulling that, whether I can do that in groups or I literally am asking my students to respond one-on-one to any of those questions. So in each of my classes, I have modules, and then within the modules for every class date, there's a folder. And within the folder, there's a what to do before class, which is the Camtasia and the associated test questions or quiz questions that they'll have to answer. And then there's a what to do during, what we are going to do during class. And that is a folder of our class activity, which is the analysis and the application of everything that's in the video. And then I have a third folder, which is what to do after class. And these are some activities that I've put in there so that they can practice what we were discussing, applying, and analyzing within the class. And I have found that there was a bit of tweaking to go from face-to-face to online, but the basic foundation of a flipped class, I think, still is really strong, and it lends itself really well to an online format. I find that students consistently have better marks. They're able to go back to this material over and over and over, and they end up discussing it with each other even before class, I have found, which is really helpful because they come to class with the foundations of what we're going to talk about, and sometimes even having talked to their peers about, well, I looked at this slide and I think it's asthma, but no, I think it's got to be restrictive disease, it's got to be sarcoid. And then so they'll kind of pound that out with each other, which is great because that's doing some of the real heavy lifting for me in class. And I actually get much better questions out of the session than if I were just giving a lecture and I'm not sure who's kind of zoning out and where their attention really is. So what to do before class, I really feel strongly that if students don't prepare to come to class, then you're not, well, it's been my experience that I was not using class time wisely. So I have to give them something to do so that we can analyze and apply something during class together. And then I've also found that what to do after class folder, boy, the more stuff I put in there, the more they stay engaged. They really do all of it. I'm always really impressed with how much work these students are really willing to do to be successful in the program. So I guess that's kind of wraps up my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Barb. Were you going to share your PowerPoint or are you going to hold off on
Oh, I
using
think
that?
you know, that's okay. I think that a description of that, it didn't need to be a whole thing, but that's fine.
Okay,
I'm
thank
gonna-
you so much.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Barb. And again, jot down your questions as you're going along. After we have our next two panelists, we'll have an open question and answer period. So next, if I could ask Melissa McGovern, if you could share your expertise in online education. Melissa McGovern.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I've been teaching or trying to teach nursing for about 6 years now. And it's truly an experience with some of these students. And then moving to this online environment has made it even more difficult to reach out and be involved with these students. They are just very um, heavy in what they're doing. They need to be very much involved with things, and they're just not engaged like they used to when we're in person. There's just so many distractions out there with family and every personal things going on and all that. So trying to overcome some of those deficits to get them to focus more, to apply more towards classes has been a real challenge. And we just keep kind of moving forward and trying to develop more and better ways to engage them during the classroom setting. Um, because honestly, in nursing, I don't know that we've really, Barb's got a great thing with the flipped classroom, but we've taken our in-person classes and trying to make them work better in this online format and trying to keep them engaged that way. And some of the things that we've done is trying to make sure they have their cameras on, of course, and then starting off the class, kind of like what Barb does, is giving small quizzes ahead of time just to see if they're actually paying attention. Did they do the readings? Were they actually going through the material and putting some effort into preparing and being ready to do this? Because if they're not uh, doing any of the pre-work, it's going to make the classroom portion super, super hard. So in my class, we try to start out with a Kahoot or some sort of question and answer period, which the Kahoots, I think, were great because it gets them actively involved. It's kind of a fun thing. It's a little competitive, and they all like to be competitive anyway. So getting them out there and finding out what they do know as far as what we're going to be covering for the day, it's a nice way to start. And then that way I have a good idea of what's going to be happening or what the students may need to go more in depth with during the course of the class. Then when I go through, I use PowerPoints a lot, but I use them just for a point of discussion. So I'll put something up on the board and then we start talking about it and we'll go in depth. And then I start asking the students, trying to draw them in more than I would even with an in-person class. Because when we're in person, it's like everybody wants to participate. We have a huge group of students and they're all talking about it and we're throwing stuff around and it becomes a big discussion, which works great. But online, it doesn't happen that way. People are like, yeah, okay, and they're walking off and going grabbing a kid or, they're going off, and walking the dog, getting something to drink, they're eating. And it's totally distracting for them. So you literally, it's going to be, hey, Tim, so what do we want to do? What's the next step we need to take after, preparing the patient for this? And then going over and, okay, Karen, now it's your turn. So Tim just got done. What are you going to step in and do? And trying to keep them so they know they have to be paying attention because they don't know who's going to be called on next. And fair or unfair, it makes them pay more attention while we're doing it and keeps them more engaged and keeps them hopefully learning a little bit better. Test scores when we went on to this online thing did drop a bit. We were having some issues with that and trying to recover from that, and they're getting better. I think we're learning how to engage the students a little bit better. But we've also changed some things. We're embedding a lot more questions in our PowerPoints while we're doing it. So that way, as we're coming through and we're talking about stuff, now we're reinforcing it with more questions. So there's more information for them there that they can get, oh yeah, this is important. I want to make sure I know about this and I understand this. And we're recording everything now too. So everything that comes across, if you're talking to students, if we're engaging the students, it's recorded and it's posted on Blackboard. Everybody has access to everything. So there's nothing they can't go back to, nothing they can't revisit one more time to cover to make sure that they're getting the information that they wanted in the first place. Make sure they're clear on it. Another thing with online learning, being available at the times when the students need us to be available is difficult at best. even trying to get office hours, even with this, because we're running back and forth, we're trying to go to clinical, we're coming back, sometimes we're on campus, thank goodness, I was happy to do it. And then sometimes we're back on Zoom again and trying to fit it all in. When I was at yesterday's classroom, I found out about a scheduling thing we can use to help schedule office hours with our students, which I thought was awesome. Because then our students, we can put out dates and times that were available and the students can sign up. So we're not sitting in an office Zoom, for 2 hours at a time, waiting for someone to show up or not show up, which is a waste of everyone's time when you're trying to do that and still trying to prep for classes and personal things too. But with student schedules and everybody working, most of our students seem to be working quite a bit and not having a whole bunch of free time to be able to meet with us. So that made it really tough. And then another thing that we were doing too is all our documentation has been simplified to the point that every link, every Zoom, anything that we need for the class is readily available in our Blackboard site. So they can come through and they know where our Zoom links are and they can go in there and there's our classroom, there's office hours. If they're going to if we need to do simulation training online, there's a link for that. So they know where all their little meeting rooms are. They can go into the syllabus and find whatever they need to. They can search for whatever they need to because we made it electronic format so it's simpler to do. They don't have to print it off and page through stuff. Makes it a little more interactive and they seem to appreciate that kind of stuff too. And then as far as online learning, because we're such a high stakes program, every point we have, or the majority of points, 80 to 85% of our points are all in our exams for our course. And then the rest are quizzes, papers, that type of thing. So we don't have any extra points in there. And our exams are so high stakes too that we invested in, just before this happened, started working with a lockdown browser type software for testing that allows the students to take their test on the computer in a secure mode. And the testing department's been wonderful for us too. They Zoom proctor and help us Zoom proctor them. And that makes it so we can still get our statistical analysis out of our tests. So we can pull all that data out to see if our tests are covering and doing what they're supposed to, if the students are being challenged, if the questions are asking what we want them to ask, that type of thing. And it's worked out marvelously well. So that was perfect timing on that one too. But the online format has just really become a struggle for most of our students trying to keep engaged and keep focused on the learning part of this. And we've lost quite a few first semester students because they got into this online environment and they don't get to do their study groups and they don't get to form those friendships like they would normally if they were on campus. And it's really hurting them and causing a lot of them to reconsider what they want to do, at least not at this time. They don't want to do nursing because it's just too much stress involved for them and too many distractions in their home lives, which I fully understand too. Um, but I think the nursing department has become a whole lot more supportive of our students in learning how to work with them and work between how we need to get things done and their needs as students, as far as meeting them in non-traditional times and making sure that all the information is out there and available for them to review whenever they want, whenever they can, because of their schedules being so hectic too. So that's basically what we're doing.
Thank you, Melissa. Sounds like you all have been very busy over the last year. And with a complex program like nursing, I really appreciate everything that you are doing for our students to help them be successful. And to Barb as well. So it is, I think online teaching in nursing and health science has been a challenge for all of us, just as it has been college-wide, but definitely within each program, we've got special needs to meet our students' learning needs. So lastly, we have Ramsey Wilson, who is going to share some information about her experience with online teaching. Ranzie is up.
Hi, everyone. And I do apologize. You guys can see me twice on the screen because, of course, out of all the days the camera on my laptop is not working. So, and so I'm unable to share my screen through my cell phone, but I am more than willing to email my PowerPoint if anything interests anyone. So I teach surgical assisting. It is an advanced certificate to surgical technology. And we've been online actually since the beginning of time, or since it started, which was about, Kathy Kabai had started this program about 5 years ago. So our program basically, runs like everyone else's. We start our modules every Monday and it ends on Sunday. Because of the content and the amount of content that our students have, I don't give them a 1 week, deadline for things. I actually make each module available for 2 weeks. So they have the amount of enough time to actually go over the material, learn the material, do the assignment, because realistically, our students are working full time. They have other factors. Having that 1 week, honestly, was just not enough for our students. And with that being said, I actually conducted a survey to my current cohort, knowing that I was going to present to you guys to see if they had any input on their learning so far. And so some of the things that some of my students had said were that students don't like to waste time or feel like they are doing busy work. And that's something that you're probably like, well, they're not doing busy work because it's all going to apply to their certification or licensure exam, or they're going to pass the exam, or they're going to, it all abides by our accreditation. And to change some things like that, for students to feel that way, I created what I call purposeful assignments. So purposeful, there's a purpose. And we're all healthcare, so we like things to be purposeful. And so the assignments that I create for them, I make sure that they're not only able to use it for that particular module, but they're able to use it for the whole entire duration of the program. So you're probably like, what are you talking about? So one of the things that I do is I actually have all the assignments listed on an open discussion. So all of my students, so let's say we're going over orthopedic surgery. Each student is assigned an orthopedic procedure, and they have the instructions on what should be included within this assignment. And anything from what they've learned in lab, to what they've seen in clinicals, to what they read in their book, to what I presented in my lecture, can all be included. They don't have to recreate the wheel, but they have to put the work to create this presentation. All the students sign an acknowledgement that their work can be shown and shared, so it is all posted on the discussion. But what we have with this is that students are posting their work, and no one's going to want to post something that is mediocre. They are posting things that they're proud of. They're posting things that they are like, yes, this is what I learned. And so when I say purposeful, part of that presentation is also asking within that discussion questions to the class about that presentation. So what I also do with that as well is I take those questions that they've created, the good ones that I know that are can be seen on the certification, and I implement those questions on the exam that they are taking, along with the exam that I created with the textbook and that sort of stuff. Another thing too with that particular assignment is that I also have it on a tab on the side of the Blackboard course of all of their past assignments and all of their past presentations, and it's nicely organized per surgical service so that they can also use that to study for not only the midterm, the final, but also ultimately the certification exam. So right now we are in the second semester and they have access to all of their quizzes, all of their exams, all of their purposeful assignments, even on their our second semester course. So I carry everything from first semester to second semester to third semester. Some other examples of purposeful assignments, they don't have to be this long case study presentation. It could be anything from creating a Quizlet to a Kahoot. One of the things that our students really enjoyed was, I provided them some videos of surgical cases and they had to narrate that video. The first step, we make an incision with a 10 blade. McBurney's incision, because that is the type of incision that you would use for the appendix or appendectomy, that sort of thing. The other great things, I have them be a teacher for the day, where they are supposed to create a mini lecture of 10-minute presentation, an assignment, that sort of stuff. So I really kind of get them engaged by making these purposeful assignments. I don't know if that's what I should call it. But we use actually Google Drive for a lot of these things. And I've actually created folders for each of my students. And within this Google Drive folder, they have actually all of their assignments. They know how to upload it, but in the beginning, I had to kind of put it into their Google Drive. I also use Google Drive to put their evaluations, to put their competency checkoffs, put their clinical log. So it's all there. And the reason why I like Google Drive so much is because it works like a cloud. And if I edit something, they see that I had edited it and that sort of thing. Sorry, other things, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but I also started using different types of websites to kind of incorporate games into it, into the resources. So Oodlu, have you guys heard of that? OODLU. It's a free .org. It's a free game creation builder. So they have everything from Balloon Pop to Space Invaders to all that stuff. And you just input your questions that you want. I know that we are college level, but Gen Z loves video games. And so even if it's a form of studying for them, they're doing it, I'm sorry, am I talking too much? And,
No, it's good to hear you, Ranzie. Keep on going.
Another thing too that I had asked my students are what sorts of things, like why are you on your cell phone or on your laptop? Like what gets you there other than texting or whatever? And a lot of my students said they love TikTok and YouTube. So guess what I am incorporating into my resources? I incorporate TikTok videos. There are surgeons that actually have TikTok accounts and they show how to do their skills and whatnot. And so I upload them and I tell them to follow these people. I mean, if they're already on TikTok for fun, why not have it be educational? So I have that. Touch surgery is another thing that I utilize. Touch surgery, if you pay, I think it's $10 more, you get the full thing, but you still get a lot of stuff for free. And I have students actually do this touch surgery, which basically it promotes you to do different steps of the surgery, and it asks you questions throughout the way, like, what layer of tissue are you actually incising? What is the vessel that is right next to so-and-so? So it's actually designed for med students. But, I have them do that, and some of the things that they've done is they've created presentations with that, where they put the list of the surgical steps along with the pictures of what they've gotten from touch surgery. I actually make audio lectures and make playlists also for them so that they can, I give them a link, and then while they're driving in their car, they get to hear this. For, I make sure that they are short, 5 minutes. So if I am going over something on the textbook, again, I'm sorry, I keep going back to the orthopedic surgery. We go over the instrumentation that we go over, the positioning, the draping, and I try to do it these 5-minute audio sessions with the different stages of surgery. So preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative. But that way they can hear it, because hearing something sometimes is more convenient for people. Especially if they're driving, or if they can't be in front of a screen. I also make YouTube playlists of videos of not only my lectures, but of videos that I overlook, that I want to incorporate into, something that I think that would benefit them to see. So, and then when I share my PowerPoint, I have a lot of course development hacks that were that made my life simple, such as you can record your own lectures directly from your laptop without having any special technology. I use the snipping tool a lot, to cut and paste things. And then for my big YouTube hack is, if you guys put a dash after the T on the YouTube, it will automatically go full screen and your students will not see any of the advertisements. So, that was a big thing, when you upload a YouTube video on your Blackboard course, when they click on it, sometimes, it takes them to the big YouTube website, and I don't want them to see, any advertisements and that sort of stuff. So if you do that, and then when sharing a screen during Zoom, if you only have one screen or one laptop, I often do the Windows key with the arrows so I can have screens side by side. I'm sorry, I'm still talking, but I'll cut it short. But the purposeful assignments really, really did help. And if you guys have more questions on that or need any ideas about that, I'm more than willing to, do some Zoom coffee meetings with any of you guys. I hope that helped.
Ranzie, definitely. Are you on the Learning Technology Committee?
No, I'm not, but I do a lot of, how can I make this easier for me? I Google everything.
Thank you so much for sharing that pearls of wisdom about technology and teaching online. So at this point in our session, we are going to open up the forum here to questions and answers, and you can either place your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand, but I'm going to start things off by asking Barb, Melissa, and Ranzie just a very basic question, and that's about teaching synchronously online, whether using Blackboard, Collaborate Ultra, or Zoom, or any other platform. Today we're looking at probably half of our members here are live video. You can see them moving, and then we're looking at some black boxes and then some really nice pictures of some folks. And in your experience teaching online, do you find that it's best to have some rules about your synchronous online classroom, such as, do you have to see the person, or are you okay with looking at black boxes? So we'll start with Barb. What are your thoughts about that? Do you have rules for your online classrooms?
Well, we definitely are pretty structured for the online classes. Yes, they're all synchronously, they all start on time. So I do actually want to hear everybody. I take roll, and I want to hear everybody engage with me when I call their name for roll. I don't make them turn their camera on. That's a fascinating debate, and I'd love to hear people talk on the other side of that. right now, I don't make people turn their camera on. I do randomly call on people. And I think it's really interesting. I think Melissa spoke to this. I've recently had the thought that I'm probably a lot more fair about who I'm calling on during the time of class in this format than I really was face to face. And I attended the one lecture about our personal bias and how much that gets in the way. And those questions are really fascinating to me as well. And I started wondering if actually the whole, I know you, I know what their test scores are. I know I can communicate with that student well. And I wonder, in the absence of all that, I honestly think that not being able to see them has facilitated me reaching out to students that I may have not spent this much time with a one-on-one communication with. So that's been a really interesting find. We take, other than that, my classes are fairly structured. So they need to be able to respond if I'm calling their name out. And if there's a drop in something, I will reach out to them personally and say, gosh, tell me about what was happening during this time in lecture. I couldn't get a response from you.
Thank you, Barb. And interesting comment about the bias factor teaching online. I have reflected recently that the same is true. I think we all have some bias, we're human, but it's minimized when you're teaching online. And you do find there's equal, opportunity for all of the students in our class, regardless of anything. So Melissa, next, if you could share your experience with teaching
Sure.
synchronously online.
Yeah, I'm not quite as structured as Barb is as far as the classroom goes. I take a look at this too, is because the students didn't pick this modality. I mean, it was forced upon them. It's forced upon us essentially, because we want to hold classes. So we are made to do this online so we can keep all this moving forward, keep their education going. And I know being at home, there's a huge distraction. Right now, I have a dog that wants nothing but me to pet them, to take them outside. And he's over here nudging my arm and, and trying to get me to go do. So I get it. There's distractions everywhere. I make them come into class initially with their cameras on, just so I can say hi to everybody, make sure everybody really is physically there. And it's not their son or daughter turning on their camera for them. Other than that, if they need to do things, I do actually request that they turn their camera off. So if something's running around or they have to fix whatever's going on, that's not distracting for other people in the class while we're talking. But it is full game to call on them when we're going through stuff and asking questions. And I don't necessarily pick on the ones that are turned off. But if we're not getting the answers that I like, if we're not getting the input that I like, then I call on everybody. I don't really stop anywhere. There's no limits to whom might be pulled into a discussion for sure, especially if we need opposing viewpoints or why are we doing this? Why? Who's supporting this? What's going on here? That kind of a thing. But it's not super structured for me. Then they have the videos. So if they getting torn apart because, one of their daughter, there's whatever, they need to change a diaper, somebody's crying, the front door rings, who knows what's going on happens, they can watch the video later too. So, and that was kind of part of that too, because it's just too distracting being here. We can't control the environment like we can on campus. So they are paying attention, they're involved, there's nothing else but four walls and us as the instructor. So you have to account for it a little bit, I think.
Thank you, Melissa. It sounds like you are taking into account the flexibility that's needed for your students. So I appreciate that. Today I was proctoring a final exam and a father walked in behind the student and I'm pretty sure he had on his boxers and had a lot of tattoos on his body, and so I found myself proctoring the father who was getting a cup of coffee or something behind the scenes. But
We
anyways,
get quite a few of those. Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Anyways, thank you so much, Ranzie. If you could give us some information about your experience with synchronous online teaching.
So I have a pretty small program. We have 12 students, and I actually made 2 sessions. So I have 6-to-1 ratio. So I'm able to, I guess, address the students a little bit more in a smaller, classroom. I'm kind of more so with Melissa. They don't have to show their faces. They do have to say hi, show their face, just like in the very beginning of the classroom. But it is structured like Barb's, where in the very beginning, I go over the past module, I go over the questions that everyone had issues with, and then I go over what to expect for the next module. And then I typically have a short lecture, and then we usually do a game at the very end where we study. So typically I encourage, if they want their family members to join too, it's kind of a whole party. But we do a lot of, live trivia, Jeopardy. I'll share my screen. I'll have a PowerPoint that has kind of looks like Kahoot, where it has, a graph with 4 answers. And then I allow the students to screen write. There's a capability in the Zoom, and then it's anonymous. So they just put a little mark on what they think is correct. And because of that, though, I see their faces probably 100% of the time. So but I don't force them, because if they have, a puppy or a kid, I don't want them to feel like it's impossible for them to participate or get things done.
Thanks, Ranzie. What feature do you use, or do the students have to have on Zoom in order to use that sort of polling feature?
I will look I know if you have a MacBook, it's like automatically on there, but I will email that to all of you guys and figure out if you have, laptop, but it's like a little, it's like a little marker on the side of the Zoom. Deb, you know everything. Do you know what the name of it is, or what the feature is?
Anybody in our Zoom classroom here know what feature that is on Zoom where you can mark? We'll figure it out.
Can't remember.
Can't remember. Sounds pretty cool. All right. Is there anybody else who has questions? I don't see anything in the chat box at this time.
Ramsey, that ability comes up when you're sharing screen, right? Yeah, like you're not going to see it right now because no one's sharing screen. But when you're sharing the screen, if you enable it, you then allow people to be able to edit what's going on the screen.
Is that the whiteboard feature?
It's not just when you're putting up just a whiteboard that's, completely blank. They can actually edit, anything that you have up. Like if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, they can doodle and write and do things on that too. So, it's a feature that you're capable of either allowing your participants to do or not do. So with college students, it works really well. When my husband was having a little Boy Scout meeting, there was, like a 6-year-old who was doodling over, all of the guest presenters' slides at one point. So you might want to practice with it a little bit.
Jeff, if you have any questions, we could always meet and I can show you how that feature works.
I think when I just went to the share screen feature, I see there's a basic and an advanced tab, and looking at the basic, there's a whiteboard capability. Is that it on the whiteboard? And then there's like a little pen. Maybe that's it. All right, so speaking of special features of teaching online, I have another question for our panelists, Barb, Melissa, and Ranzie. Can you tell me what your go-to technology, something that you have to have that makes technology-based learning possible for our students? What is your one go-to tip or hack or tool for testing that you must have? We'll start with Barb.
Well, I think a combination. I also use the same testing. So in respiratory therapy, we also use the same testing platform that nursing uses. And I really, really like it a lot. It's really a wonderful tool for a number of reasons, all about the statistics that you can get on your the quality of the test questions. There's so much that you can tie each question back to an objective that's part of the standards for your program. I love, love, love that. I love that the students take the tests on, it'll lock down your browser, but you also do not have to be connected with the internet. So an unstable internet is not problematic during testing. You have to have internet to download the test and then upload the test, but the student doesn't get freaked out. Like on Blackboard, if I'm given a quiz, I won't put it in the other tool, but if I'm like, let's just go to Blackboard and, you know, let's kind of knock out this quiz in 10 minutes. If somebody is losing connection, they get all unfocused and they get panicked about getting back on, and then like, you know, how much am I really measuring what their answers are, right? You know, because they're not focused on what they're learning. They're focused on how to hurdle the technology to answer the questions. So I love the testing platform that we use. And I would say the one piece of technology outside of testing that I use really is Camtasia, in that the finished product, now it takes a million hours to put together a really slick presentation, but they look great and the students will really attend to them. I really like that tool.
Thank you, Barb. Melissa?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with the testing software because it's taken it to a whole new level. It's something we don't even have to worry about anymore either.
That's the exam soft?
ExamSoft, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just put it in there. You can alter, adjust, change completely outright, there's like 7, 8 different question types you can put in now, and they're telling us they're going to be putting in many, many more coming up soon. So there's all different kinds of ways to challenge the students during testing to really find out what they know or don't know. So I mean, it works great. And then we get great information out. I mean, it's just very robust data that we get back from that. And then my favorite, because I just love playing them, are the Kahoots too. I just think that's a great polling type software that you get some nice general knowledge, and you can actually see if they prepared or if they read, or if, you know, if they just totally ignored everything because they have no clue what they're answering. And they have fun with it too. We make it a little bit more interactive and just make a big, you know, enjoyable time out of it, but it does provide good information back too. Until I find something a little bit more interactive, I'll use that for quite a while.
Thank you, Melissa. And I see Tim has his hand up, but if we could have Ranzie, I know you have a large repertoire of your technology and tools that you use. If you could pick your favorite for us, please.
Honestly, the best thing is probably just what Zoom has to offer. Karen, you have your green screen behind you. You can upload different green screens. So what I've done is if I'm going over anatomy, for instance, I will have that as my green screen and go over the anatomy behind me. And, you know, I actually was able to purchase this for all my students. This is that ring light with the cell phone holder. Again, I only have 12 students, so that's why it was more doable, but we had to do lab, you know, online. So students had to show me their suture skills. And obviously I wanted to make sure that they had adequate equipment. And if you guys, you know, don't have one of those ring lights with a cell phone holder, it actually has made a lot of my presentations also when I record my lab skills and, you know, present it to them so that they can review the videos and stuff like that, it makes it clear and distinguishable. But yeah, just Zoom and a light.
Very cool. I've seen those lights, those circular lights before, and I wondered about them. So Tim has his hand up, and I also see that there was a question about how do we access ExamSoft? Does anybody have a quick answer for that?
Yeah, I just typed in there too. All you really need to do for basic information, introductory information, is go to examsoft.com. And then you can find out all the basic. It gives you information on the platform, how it works, what you can do with it, and then numbers and or in-depth information too, if you want to look into that.
Thanks a bunch, Melissa. Tim?
All right, so I'm curious to hear from all of you about this. One of the things that came out of yesterday's panel, which was really sort of fascinating, was that a lot of the panelists expressed that they are really sort of dismayed by the old-fashioned use of discussion boards in an online class. And these are fields or disciplines kind of like mine in English, where it's not, I wouldn't say it's easy, but you can basically take like an in-person classroom discussion and try and reproduce it in some online setting. And I think traditionally people use discussion boards and you have rules and whatnot, but it was interesting to hear people, the panelists yesterday, talk about ways in which they try and find more innovative ways to get students talking with each other as you would in a classroom. And I admit to being totally naive when it comes to like knowing what you guys do in your classrooms, but what I envision is students are in a lab, they're working together, they're learning about tools and figuring stuff out, that it's very active learning, it's very hands-on. And how at all, do you guys sort of reproduce that, or how do you do your best to try and emulate that in an online setting? How do you get students talking with each other? I mean, that's one of the biggest mysteries that I've also found too, is if you ask students to post on a discussion board, it's just sort of, it's the exact opposite of what Ranzie said earlier about purposeful learning. It's like students are doing it just to check the box. They're not really talking with each other. They're just like doing it to get the points or whatever. And so I'm wondering how you get students learning from each other. And maybe that's not possible because of the sort of certification and licensing requirements that you guys have. But how do you take what usually happens in a real in-person classroom and try and replicate that in an online setting?
We do small little activities when we're in our classrooms too, because Zoom is nice too, because it has breakout rooms, and it doesn't really get them doing too terribly much, but you can take groups 3, 4, 6, we have 6 or 7 people we'll put in a breakout room, and we'll do a case study covering whatever disease or anything that we want to cover with the students, and give them a set of questions that they need to go through and research and find answers to, and then they have to present and do that kind of stuff. So at least it has small group work where they're getting together, talking to each other, getting to know each other a little bit, because honestly they don't do the same kind of study groups. They don't hang out together. They're not really conversing on the material anymore like they used to when we were all on campus. So it's really hard, but some of them do talk to each other more often, whether they're FaceTiming or Skyping or doing whatever on the side, or actually getting together now, and having discussions about class and doing stuff. But it's real minimal outside the classroom for sure. But that's the only thing we've been able to come up with.
Just to dovetail off of what Melissa said, I've used the same Zoom feature where you have the students break out into separate rooms. You've given them the flipped material ahead of time, so they know a skill that they have to practice outside of class, and then within the breakout room they're able to discuss the skill, and then they have to demonstrate it for the other students when they come back into the main Zoom room. And that's worked out pretty well for the students to learn those skill competencies that they have to practice at home, and then share in an online platform, and then go to a clinical site and practice on a real person. So it's sort of a progression in learning. The flipped classroom, learning together in a small group, and then taking it into the clinical area and learning it experientially.
I can add even a little bit more to that. What we do for our clinical competencies is, we'll demonstrate the skill, and actually before they can even be checked off by an instructor as for the actual competency, they have to have a peer-to-peer competency where they go up to one of their peers and they perform the skill, And so they have to have passed that, and the peer, the second student, needs to sign their name, right? And then, so they do that with each other, and students learn from each other, I think, more than they learn from me, I'm pretty sure, anyway. And then by the time that they get to the instructor, they have really pounded out because they've done it multiple times to get it just right. And that's worked really well for us.
So if I can interject, there's a lot of you that use Zoom with your students, and there's also a lot of instructors that use Collaborate Ultra with students. And just a reminder that the library does offer virtual study rooms for students, which is set up through Blackboard Collaborate. So if you have groups that are practicing or want to have study groups, getting prepared to do presentations in your classes, anytime that the library is open, and we're open the same hours we used to be open when we were physically available, students can go in and can ask to have a virtual study room set up for them, and then they can share that link back with whomever is in their group, and that works really well. I can also say that as health sciences librarian, I have met with a lot of groups when they're working on research projects that they need to do together and presentations that they need to do together. One student in the group usually contacts me to set up an appointment. I've done it via Zoom usually, and then everybody shows up, and I work with all of them and help answering questions. So you've got some really dynamic groups, and I have to give kudos for that. And the students are really engaged, and I think I see a lot of what Ranzie calls her purposeful assignments. It shows when the students are contacting us about for assistance with those, because the students are really engaged. They understand why they're doing it. It makes so much sense, So I have to give big props for that.
And my program is mostly online, and like I said before, my students are working full-time as surgical techs. But to get that face-to-face, we actually use Flipgrid. Have you guys heard of Flipgrid? It is asynchronous discussion board where you are recording a video of yourself. You can answer any questions, whatever the discussion board might be, or discussion question or assignment might be. What's nice about that is you're able to see all the students, their faces when they respond to other students. It's another video as well. You can also see the student, engagement, how much time, like each video, you know what I mean, is. So on average, when we do a Flipgrid discussion, and a lot of the times it's actually that we usually use it for our clinical type, assignments and questions. And on average, we have about 6 to 8 hours of student interaction, because, they're required to have a video. I think the maximum amount for the video is 10 minutes that a student can make. That's the maximum amount. And then you can upload presentations directly to that Flipgrid discussion board along with your own Flipgrid video. But the students liked it. I mostly use it, like I said, for clinical, and for those classes that don't have a lot of interaction. I think it would be helpful for even introductions, so you can see, them. Maybe that helps.
I like that idea of using some sort of technology as an introduction or an icebreaker at the start of the class. That's a great idea. Do we have any other questions today? Did I miss anything? Oh, I see Julie Garcia posted, how can you alter YouTube link again to remove the unwanted ads that Ranzie mentioned? Ranzie, if you could share that, wasn't it like a line or a T or something after the YouTube? You're muted, Ranzie.
can you see it? So whatever link the video, the web address is, put a dash after the T. And then when you copy and paste that wherever it may be, and you'll see it has no cookies, no advertisements, and it automatically goes to full screen when they click on that link.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ranzie, for writing that and sharing it auditorily. All right. Any other questions here? All right. On this Thursday afternoon, it's Thursday, isn't it?
Yes,
All
yeah.
right. On this Thursday afternoon, I want to say thank you so much for Tim Henningsen for getting things started here. I know that Jen Kelly was heavily involved with getting all of these online quality online sessions prepared for us. And thank you definitely to our panelists today from our Nursing and Health Science Division, Barb Coe, Melissa McGovern, Ramsey Wilson. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Woohoo!
And thank you to Karen Batke for facilitating today's conversation. This was incredibly informative. It was useful. It was innovative. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the panelists for coming. So
Yep.
hopefully we'll see you guys next week. We got 2 more. So
Oh, good.
Stay
Perfect.
safe, be well.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was